Hi everyone, today I'm going to tell you about my predictions for the week of April 22nd, and I'm making those predictions based on astrological transits primarily. And first, let's quickly recap my predictions for the previous week, the week of April 15th, and see how many, if any, have come true. So as far as the direction of the stock market, I was correct about 2 days out of 5, which I would say it's not the greatest percentage, but nevertheless, the Wednesday I predicted the market would go down, and it did, and Thursday it went up as I predicted. On Monday I thought it was going to be going up on some positive news, and it actually went down. On Tuesday I thought the market was going to go down, and it was mixed, but mostly positive. And on Friday, again, I thought that there will be a stressful day, and it will also reflect in the markets going down. The day was stressful, however, as far as like geopolitical events, but the market actually went up. So among other events, some of the representations of the ongoing transits between Saturn and Pluto, and as well as the nodes that we can highlight, where the fire at Notre Dame. There was also some news about ex-Peruvian president shooting himself when he was about to be arrested. So all that illustrates situations where something or someone who's famous or well-known or in a public place, public figure, and they're being removed or suffer serious damage. We also had news over the weekend, the unfortunate news about the attacks in Sri Lanka, terrorist attacks. So that's unfortunately another sort of a manifestation of this ongoing transit, and it results often in serious, basically attacks, or that involve a lot of casualties, or occur in public places, or involve public figures. So unfortunately, this aspect isn't going away anytime soon. It will continue into 2020. The nodes will not be there, but Saturn and Pluto will be. And as bad as sort of what we've seen has been so far, including, I guess, the recent earthquake in the Philippines on Monday, the 22nd, again, I'm recording this a day late, so which also resulted in some deaths and some people missing and damages to the buildings. The worst, I'm afraid, is yet to come, where this transit is going to be joined by Mars in June. So I'm afraid that basically the manifestations we have witnessed so far, like the attacks in Christchurch and Sri Lanka, major earthquakes and damages to the buildings, we will continue seeing those, and there may be worse basically outcomes, something along the lines of, again, leaders being killed or removed, governments collapsing or really being transformed in a major way. As far as the earth kind of moving, there may be a lot of shaking, a lot of kind of caves or caverns giving in, so large mining disasters are possible, and like miners being trapped, or gas explosion, earthquake with tsunami potentially affecting a power plant. So all that is kind of ongoing influence, and it will continue, sort of heightened probability of it will continue. And so let's see, so this week, as I said, those two events I can point out as two manifestations, but similar manifestations can occur, basically between now and 2020, with certain months being having higher probability, such as this week that we will be entering at week of April 22nd. So in terms of other news, I predicted last week that 15th and 16th of April will have increased probability of positive news about communication and transportation industries, and as well as there will be some increased focus on oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, poisons, navy, etc. And particularly I did mention that there may be sort of questions about the value of cannabis related businesses, and on Monday the stocks of primarily Canadian companies, but I guess many American investors have stakes in those, and the movements of those are highly affected by sort of the consumers in the US. So obviously I think that they're a good example. So on Monday, on the 15th of April, there was a big drop, and then on the following day, they have somewhat recovered on some positive, I guess, survey information coming out that Americans as a whole are not opposed to, or they're not opposed to legalizing cannabis. So there was large move. There was also some news about the oil futures, I think, going down that week. Let me see, I forgot the date exactly. But I think it was also either Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, it was on Tuesday, and I think it was on Tuesday. I lost my note here. But in other news, as far as the communication transportation companies, on Tuesday, the 16th, there was some news coming out that Sprint and T-Mobile shares fell on the report that Department of Justice wouldn't approve their merger as structured. There was also news about Netflix stock going down despite kind of gaining subscribers, and Netflix again has to do with like movies, so Neptunian theme of again oil, drugs, Navy, etc. was strong. There was also some follow-up news, I guess, about the situation in Japan where there was some Navy sailor that basically there was a homicide and suicide in one, but obviously there had to be some follow-up. It's not that there had to be, but rather there was some follow-up news about that situation where, you know, obviously public concerns had to be addressed. And another news that, again, specifically I would say illustrate the predictions that I made, that in the US specifically, even though I predicted for the 19th, and the news came up on the 16th of April, but then my prediction was that there would be some surprising changes or announcement about related to, say, IT or telecommunications or social media company or aerospace company, where it would be a sudden surprise regarding some project or a leader, a CEO, for example, and that there would be like a turnabout or some surprising change. And so indeed on the 16th, Jack Dorsey, Twitter CEO, had tweeted that there will be some changes coming up to Twitter platform, and users were unhappy with it. I guess the change will be that people will be able to follow topics rather than users. And I guess another manifestation of this prediction, or this aspect that illustrates the prediction coming true, in my opinion, was that on, I believe it was either Saturday or Sunday, so I think it was actually Saturday, so just one day after the actual prediction, the date of the actual prediction, there was news from the SpaceX about it experiencing some anomaly, and so the there was basically an issue where let me see, where it, its capsule had suffered basically a failure and exploded right before the test was about to be carried out. So that was, I guess, an unexpected and surprising and unpleasant event, and that happened literally the day after that I pointed out that something like that might happen. So another piece of news about, again, related to Neptunia, sort of theme that I thought would be strong specifically for the US early last week, was that there was a major, I guess, bust, the largest federal opioid bust in the US, where they caught 60 doctors and pharmacists who were illegally prescribing, or rather giving away, selling, exchanging for some, I'm not sure for what, something bad. Millions of pills. So that is, again, this kind of a negative, stressful Neptunian influence, which again emphasizes topics like, or domains like oil, pharmaceuticals, Navy, water, too much wet weather, and things sort of kind of going astray with those issues, and, you know, cannabis, religion also, all of that falls into this category. So whenever there are stressful aspects, there might be problems related to those areas, which is what I've predicted for last week, specifically for the US. So let's see, for Thursday of last week, Friday of last week, I thought that there may be some news for the US that relate to sort of government contracting, healthcare, services, kind of, and workforce, and compensation for workers. And there may be concerns about whether something's being over or underpriced, whether somebody's compensated for their services adequately, and or maybe workers would strike because they feel like they don't receive proper compensation or health care. And I actually wasn't aware of it, but apparently at that time, last week, from April 11th through the 22nd, there was an ongoing largest private sector strike in years for Stop and Shop chain. And there was, I guess, over 30,000 employees that went on strike, and it just ended on April 22nd, which is, I just Googled to see if there was any strike of any sort, and that's what came up, that the strike ended on 22nd, and that the employees won, and that the chain had, company lost millions of dollars. I guess they had to comply with the demands of the workers. So on Friday, let's see, I also predicted for China that there might be increased probability of stressful news regarding either steel, oil, coal, minerals, etc. And also that there may be a need for sort of fast action or assertive action to address that. However, that the current methods of dealing, I guess, with issues may be too rigid, and or there may be some governmental regulations that wouldn't allow for that change to occur, at least not occur fast enough. So last week, indeed, the news was that China's steel and iron ore futures, they suffered the worst weekly performance in several months. However, as of Monday, 22nd of April, the futures actually rose about 3% because the government of China had basically stepped in, and they said that they would maintain the policy of basically government support for the economy. And so on these positive news on the 22nd of April, the futures went up. So let's see, and for the week of 22nd of April, to quickly mention the global influence again, Saturn conjunct Pluto in Capricorn with the nodes, and on top of that, this week we also have Mars squaring Neptune. So additional stressful influence, increased probability of all these horrible things that I've already mentioned several times: earthquakes, disasters, maritime disasters in particular, explosions, fire on an oil rig, attacks indeed on the religious places or religious leaders, because Neptune also has to do with religion, and like I said, maritime disasters or disasters involving ships or oil or transportation over water being poisoned. And because of Saturn, planets being in the Saturn, there's increased probability of it occurring in either cold locations, something that's icy in the cold. So maybe some problems with exploring oil somewhere in some northern hemisphere and far away, or stand off over that. Or Saturn also has to do with Capricorn has to do with places that are made of, again, stone, steel. They're cold, they're tall, like some mountains, or something that can be seen from like a space and or from above, or that towers over you, or something that's been standing a long time. So things that are kind of considered to be, again, established, permanent, like a government or really tall old building. However, again, in this particular week, we also have the Neptune and Mars forming a square. So in addition to that, we will have increased probability of problems with chemicals, maybe chemical explosions, chemical attacks that end up in polluting water, or it could be a combination, like I said, earthquake with tsunami, or in case of this earthquake that just occurred in Philippines, 6.1, but because I guess of its location, it led to deaths and destruction. Even though there was no tsunami triggered, the location of the earthquake was a nation that is basically consists of many islands. So again, the water is involved, so the location of the earthquake was near water. So we may definitely experience more of that. The peak of that influence is Monday as well as Wednesday through Friday. Ongoing prediction that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg may leave or experience some problems, including health problems or just being really stressed out at work, June of this year. And for China, continuing increased probability of problems with either earthquakes, various disasters, oil, navy, pharmaceuticals, pollutions, cigarettes, deception, as well as long-distance transportations and or international agreements. So this is a long-lasting influence. It doesn't mean that something will exactly like an event happen this week, but it's just that these are the topics that there might be some things that are being worked out and things are kind of being worked on that will have some sort of results over the long term. But the increased probability of, again, earthquake or some disasters is there, as well as it is, of course, for the entire world. But China is one of the countries that has certain points in its chart that this ongoing stressful Saturn-Pluto transit may trigger. So on Monday, I predicted that the market would go down 65%. There was a mix. I believe Dow Jones went down, Nasdaq went up. I also thought there will be a increased probability of surprising and sudden developments related to IT, telecoms, electric cars, power generation companies, banks, and electronic payment providers, like blackouts and disruptions of service. I haven't seen that. Again, we did have this explosion of the, capsule of the SpaceX on Saturday, so it's not clear to me whether it was a previous aspect for the US that was basically occurring on Friday, and this explosion on SpaceX occurs on Saturday, and or globally there's this influence that kind of potentially could trigger some event like that, like this kind of a explosion of something or blackout was occurring on Monday. So I guess the SpaceX may have potentially caught sort of both sides of it. But I haven't really heard about any other blackouts or any disruptions of service. And as I'm predicting, and that's written out in a little bit more detail on my blog at telstunka.com, both on Monday as well as at the end of the week, there may be increased news again about the old leaders either resigning, kind of being removed, being killed, buildings collapsing, especially old buildings, and major geopolitical changes such as status of some country may be changing. And in this case, the preference, like if there are any elections or some sort of leadership may change, the preference actually may go to conservative leaders, and or conservative leaders may gain kind of more popularity, or approaches that are again tied to sort of this rigid hierarchical structure of the large company or government. Those may be preferred as opposed to some radical change where people who are considered kind of irrational and unstable, they may be rather unpopular instead. So for markets, the focus may be this week particularly again on oil, which we already have seen this with US basically saying that they will no longer grant, I guess, some exceptions to companies or governments that want to buy oil from Iran, and oil went up. But yes, there was this square between Mars and Neptune all week, so definitely increased focus on oil. And square means stress and disruption. And so also, of course, anything else that is ruled by Neptune, so like pharmaceuticals, drugs, religious kind of figures, events, movies, videos. Let's see. beverages, navy, water in general, bad sort of weather that involves too much water. All of that is a possibility that there may be too much water, too little water. Fire, like I said, on an oil rig, or attack on religious places and figures, which we've already seen, but could also be a concert or, say, movie theater, and or somebody famous who is, say, a movie star, etc., or, singer. Also increased focus on steel metals, minerals, coal, precious stone, and those, again, just like older leaders or conservative leaders or somebody who is established, may be perceived more popularly or favorably this week. Similarly, these kind of areas, the steel, minerals, metals, precious stone, those areas may also be seen somehow as more desirable or more popular, and I would assume that that might lead to increase in value. And there may also be news about some major deals or construction projects, which again, those will be, I guess, Notre Dame of course will have to be basically fixed up, but there could be other news about large-scale projects that are either involving a lot of people or occur at a very public place or are led by somebody famous. So let's see. So yeah, like I said, continuing probability of basically attacks as well as chemical attacks. And in Houston, there was this ongoing, issue with fires at the petrochemical facilities, or something like that may reignite. And let's see, some drug may also be announced to maybe have some side effects that are undesirable, like fever or rashes, inflammation, and or there may be news about some epidemic increase. And I think I've heard something about I think it was about pigs in some country where, I think it was in China actually, where there was some swine flu, and it will lead to shortage of pork because a lot of pigs have to be slaughtered. So this may also, of course, come up about something to do with humans, again, something that maybe is a waterborne disease and or involves a lot of coughing some liquids, or is spread through wet surfaces, etc., and bodily fluids. And there may be some either problems with the drug that treats that, or a drug may be needed, desperately some drug may be needed to address maybe some fast spreading problem. So let's see, for China, on Monday, possibly stressful news about metals, steel, minerals, etc. And same time, that's my prediction, positive news about shipments over water, over water, as well as for Navy, oil, chemicals, etc. And I suppose, yes, that there was actually increased focus on steel and minerals, or rather steel and iron ore on Monday. However, the news actually was positive, where the futures went up 3%, as I said. So on Tuesday, actually for the entire week, to make a long story short, I think it's going to be a down week overall, big time, and specifically on Thursday, Friday, there may be a really big down move, especially on Thursday. I'm not sure if the market will recover by Friday and or just Monday. Monday most likely will be an up day, but there may be a really big drop, and it may be an uncertainty and or oil. Again, Neptune with other planets often leads to this V-shaped drop and sort of bounce back. And certainly we have news about oil, but there may be other Neptune-related topics as well. And most likely around Thursday, Friday is when we'll see the biggest drop. So Tuesday drop about, I guess it's the lightest day of the week, so maybe only 55 to 60% chance. Wednesday, I'm giving it about 65% chance drop. Thursday 65 and Friday 65. But like I said, the worst day to me seems to be Thursday as far as being stressful. So for Wednesday, there may be, specifically for Wednesday, problems with agreements involving steel and coal, potentially arguments between various companies that are pushing for some action, especially in the areas of related to cars, engines, or firearms, and conservative or governmental forces that may prevent that from happening, or demand some regulation. So maybe some car manufacturer wants to implement a new cool feature, but then there's, regulator that says, no, not so fast. And there may also be problems with unclarity, sort of lack of clarity lack of clarity about these agreements, because again, one side may be pushing for action, but yet the action may not be taken because there is no clear direction. And or as far as attacks go, like I said, it could be, again, more religious sort of influenced attacks, or something to do with like movies and videos, again, maybe places where people go see that or listen to music, and or leaders. But there may also be attacks by somebody who is a Navy officer, former SEAL, or they're under mental sort of fatigue, or they're having mental issues, mental breakdown, or they're under influence of drugs. As well as there may be shipments, problems with shipments over water, which again makes me think of that Houston petrochemical, Deer Park petrochemical facility, where the fire may reignite, or another similar situation may occur that may again lead to poisoning of the water and problems with shipping over water because of that. So a specific topics of interest for Thursday, other than the market being down and that being a tense day, I think there may be additional focus on public figures, such as, again, governmental and corporate leaders, famous individuals, maybe on some psychic, or somebody who is, a professor and psychiatrist, or somebody who is suffering from some mental illness, for example, or somebody who is famous singer, etc. Famous places, especially tall buildings, mountains, very cold places, or something can be seen from sort of afar and from above, as well as nuclear plants and spying and hacking. So those might be the topics that may come up, especially on Thursday of this week. So, imagine some sort of disaster that combines one or more of the above. And so on Thursday and Friday, like I said, there might be a big market move regardless of the direction. I predict it most likely will be greater than usual in magnitude, but most likely down and then bounce up to either Friday or at least Monday, I think, will be an up day. And then Friday, there may be, again, similar trends to what we will observe the entire week, but specifically for Friday, there may be additional focus on some public figure that is like a leader, maybe a wealthy individual, somebody who is eccentric, somebody who is seen as irresponsible or wasting money, or basically not being rewarded for, what they've actually done, but receiving money and kind of wasting it. So it could be maybe a leader from some financial institution, or it could be even an IT company, or some company that's, again, this leader is seen, like I said, maybe cool, maybe they're smart and wealthy, but at the same time they'll be seen as being irresponsible and basically acting erratically. So that's for Friday. And I think I've already mentioned it in several of my videos, but basically, yes, I do think that there will be even worse sort of potentially earthquake, even stronger earthquakes, even bigger disasters. And this week is tense, but even compared to this week, June seems to be the entire month of June virtually into early July looks pretty stressful, and then also, of course, then there's September, it looks pretty stressful, and some of these aspects will continue into 2020. So sure, some of the changes may be positive at the end, but old guard is being cleared and some new fresh roots sprout, etc., or maybe not roots but rather shoots. But definitely there may be some important events that make these years unforgettable, so that goes beyond just this week's prediction. But it is important to pay attention to kind of the events that occur at this time, because they may again occur, or some similar trend, similar patterns may reoccur around June and September. So this was it for me for this week. I hope you are going to have a great one, because again, not everybody will be affected, and hopefully you will be able to take advantage of things that come up, opportunities that come up in your life, using some of my predictions that I make on a weekly basis. And also, you can visit me at tolstonka.com to read those at your own pace, because I may be talking too fast. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.